When it comes to wacky animated neighbors and cartoons, Dale Gribble from King of the Hill is one of the wackiest. Driven by his impulses, a fairly gray morality, and a slew of conspiracy theories, you never know what Dale is going to do next. While this can lead to him being a nuisance and danger to people, Dale has bright and admirable moments. But what are the best of these deeds, and what are the worst? Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is the best and worst deeds of Dale Gribble. For this list, we're going to be starting with Dale's most good and admirable deeds, and work our way down to his more questionable acts. At the top of this list, we have staying loyal to his wife. If you've watched King of the Hill, you know all about the season-spanning affair between Dale's wife, Nancy, and John Redcorn. Even if Dale never found out about the affair, this episode certainly served as karma. In Night and Deity, we meet Sheila, another exterminator who Dale admires for her professionalism and skill. Dale respects Sheila and is impressed and amazed by her, though it's more in a fanboyish way than anything romantic.
Look at the way she applies that chemical.
Still, Nancy notices the sparks between them, and although Dale blows off Nancy's concerns, it's only because he's oblivious. This all comes to a head when, after agreeing to go to a late-night extermination job with Sheila, Dale finally learns that Sheila has feelings for him. But while Dale acknowledges that he likes her, he views their relationship as platonic. He makes it clear to Sheila that he loves Nancy, making a heartwarming speech where he calls Nancy the greatest woman in the world, telling Sheila that he doesn't want to be with anyone else. While we know that staying loyal to a spouse is the least a good husband or wife can do, this was still an impressive and sweet moment for Dale that shows how deep his love for Nancy runs. Keeping Chuck Mangioni's secret. In Megalodale, Hank puts in a good word for Dale that gets him a huge extermination gig at the Megalomart. It starts off simple, with Dale only trying to catch rats. However, as he continues finding more clues, Dale comes to the realization that he isn't hunting after rats, but is instead hunting after Chuck Mangione, the store's celebrity mascot.
It's Chuck Mangione.
Obviously, Hank and the others don't believe him, and the show makes it seem like it was the work of a couple of teenage employees who wanted to play a prank on Dale. But then, it turns out that Chuck actually is living in the Megalomart, both as a means to take a break from his constant megalo jobs and as a way to stick it to the man. Though shocked and confused at first, Dale respects Chuck's actions, given that he's a fan of sticking it to the man himself. In the end, Dale is able to catch the teenagers and prove himself to be a competent exterminator while still keeping Chuck's secret, even while Bill and Boomhauer continue poking fun at Dale's so-called crazy conspiracy. This honestly says a lot about Dale's character. Remember, Dale is someone who enjoys being right as much as Hank and Peggy do, and brags about every little bit of success he gets. So for him to pretend to be wrong in order to keep Chuck's secret and help him out, it shows that Dale isn't necessarily all about his ego, and can occasionally take a hit for someone else's sake.
Yeah, my mistake. Silly me.
Speaking of which, saving Bobby from fire ants. Getting bitten by a fire ant isn't any fun, but getting bit by hundreds of them and all at the same time, that's a new level of pain, but one that Dale was willing to take. In a strange subplot, Bobby gets hypnotized by the smell of a queen fire ant.
Yes, my queen.
You gotta love that early installment weirdness. After taking care of her, he eventually frees the queen, placing her back into an anthill. Unfortunately, while Bobby was loyal to his queen, the ants were anything but thankful. This led to Bobby getting swarmed by fire ants. When he saw this, Dale told Bobby to take his hand and let the ants crawl onto him. He did this without hesitation and without asking for anything in return from Bobby or Hank. We'll see an example of this in just a bit, but Dale hardly ever does anything for free, wanting to be either praised or compensated for any effort he gives. This goes to show how seriously Dale took the threat, and how much he cared about getting Bobby out of harm's way. Once Dale takes on the ants, they of course bite him, and the pain is enough to make him momentarily black out. Dale's a professional exterminator, and even if he isn't the most informed or educated exterminator, we're sure he knew about the pain that he was signing up for. So yeah, this was a noble act. The only thing that lessens it is, well, everything else Dale does in this episode. And don't worry, we'll get to that. Helping John Redcorn get land from the government. If there's one thing more ironic than Dale's loyalty to his wife, It's his friendship with her ex-secret lover, John Redcorn. In Nancy Boys, Nancy breaks up with John Redcorn after falling back in love with Dale. As John Redcorn gets more and more upset with this dramatic situation, Nancy gets just as upset, leaving Dale confused but still wanting to make things right. While trying to convince John Redcorn to go back to being his wife's massage therapist, he agrees to help John Redcorn get land from the government, land that once belonged to his tribe. These efforts come to fruition later in the episode Spin the Choice, and while 12 acres is a far cry from what John Redcorn originally asked for, that isn't exactly Dale's fault. Dale did all he could to help with the paperwork process, even after John Redcorn agreed with Nancy that they shouldn't see each other anymore. Dale wasn't doing this in exchange for something his wife wanted, he just wanted to help his friend, while also fighting the government. It's nice to see him being so generous with this time, and through Dale's efforts, John Redcorn is still able to get at least a small piece of land that he can use, and that he promises to pass on to Dale and Joseph. Trying to protect Bill from humiliation. This should be obvious, but Dale isn't the nicest guy to Bill. In fact, he almost never gives up a chance to make fun of him or insult him. So why are we putting an interaction with Bill as one of his best deeds? Because sometimes you just need a friend who can be brutally honest. Bill becomes a competitive eater to impress his latest girlfriend. While Hank and others see this as a skill Bill can use to gain fame for America and win the heart of his new girlfriend, Dale's the only one who sees the darker side of it. When Dale was a kid, he too ate things, specifically bugs, in order to be popular, because kids see something like that as a spectacle. Unfortunately, they also see it as something to laugh at. Since he was humiliated by his eating-related past, Dale didn't want Bill to go through the same thing. Not being one to reveal his secrets, Dale didn't do a great job of convincing him of this at first, coming off as unsupportive and cruel with Bill, assuming Dale was jealous. But even when Dale reveals why he was trying to discourage Bill, Bill does his hot dog eating contest anyway and has to experience the humiliation Dale was talking about firsthand in order to understand it. But even after being dismissed by Bill, Dale still cheers when Bill gives up the hot dog eating trophy and lets him know that he's proud of him and happy that he's no longer making a fool of himself for the sake of shallow fame. Giving up one of his kidneys. Dale agrees to give up one of his kidneys to help NHRA driver John Force. Giving up an organ is one of the bravest and most noble things a person can do. Given that Dale is already weak and has poor health due to all his smoking and the chemicals he uses, this is even more of a risk for him. And this isn't even mentioning the guy's fear of hospitals. For someone like Dale, this was a huge sacrifice. But why are we putting it at the bottom of our good deeds list? Well, Dale didn't do this out of the goodness of his heart. Hank had to practically strong-arm him, and even then, he only agreed to do it if John Force gave him several things in return, like putting the Dale's dead bug ant on his racing car, and if Hank agreed to be him for a day. After it was revealed that the kidney was going to a sick kid instead of John Force, Dale tried to steal his kidney back and nearly got away with it. Even when he decided in the end to let the sick kid have his kidney, Dale made the kid give him candy and toys in exchange, although this could have just been to save face. While the act itself was definitely a good deed, we can only give Dale a little bit of credit for it. Now it's time to cross over to the dark side of our favorite exterminator and conspiracy nut. These are Dale's worst deeds. Starting with the most mild example, we have purposely ruining Hank's lawn. See, I told you we were going to talk about it. Hank becomes self-conscious about the quality of his lawn. Because of this, he not only buys new grass, but fires Dale as his personal exterminator. Instead of taking this with grace, Dale does all he can to sabotage Hank's new lawn by planting fire ants and messing with Hank and Peggy's efforts to get rid of them, like removing their eco-kill trap. Planting fire ants once was already super petty, but the fact that Dale was planting ants several times a day just took this to a whole new level. What makes this worse is that even when Dale gets what he wanted, being rehired as Hank's exterminator, he still destroys Hank's lawn with his ridiculous amount of chemicals, leaving it as nothing but a patch of dirt and leaving Hank absolutely heartbroken. Perhaps the cherry on top of this awful Sunday is that Dale didn't feel remorse about this at all. If it weren't for Peggy telling Hank the truth, Dale likely never would have revealed what he did. Even when Hank finds out, Dale's more concerned with not getting beaten up than apologizing. As we explained before, he makes amends for this by helping Bobby and later getting Hank a new patch of grass. But this was still probably one of the worst schemes Dale has ever done, simply because it was so personal. Like Hank said, you don't mess with a man's lawn. Digging a hole under Hank's house. Speaking of how awful a neighbor Dale is, there is no episode that shows this better than the Texas Skill Saw Massacre, and it all starts with Dale digging a tunnel under Hank's house. While he claims it's a friendship tunnel, the fact that he kept it a secret meant Dale probably knew that Hank was going to be mad about it. But as awful and stupid as this idea was, it's only one element of this section. After the hole is discovered, Hank's house gets condemned as unsafe, forcing him and his family to move in with the Gribbles. It should be noted that Dale only offered because Nancy was forcing him. Not exactly neighborly, and it doesn't get better from here. While the Hills are there, Dale is obnoxious, from keeping Hank up late with his TV watching, to trying to charge Hank for things like breakfast and toilet paper. It's no wonder that Hank is at his wit's end with Dale during this episode. Later on, when Dale is, again, being a nuisance, he puts his hand in front of a saw that Hank was using, causing him to accidentally cut off Dale's finger.
I can't believe I cut off my best friend's finger.
While both of them are responsible for this, the fact that Dale lies, tries to pin the accident completely on Hank, and then taunts him with the restraining order afterwards, really just paints a terrible picture of Dale. We already know how petty and annoying he is, but the way Dale treats Hank here, not to mention how careless he was for digging the hole in the first place, makes you wonder how these two are still friends, trying to use his family for profit. For the most part, Dale, while not the most intelligent or responsible, is still a loving husband and father, as we discussed earlier.
That's my son. I made him.
However, this love can be blinded by dollar signs. Dale tries to sue the company that makes his cigarettes in order to get some extra money, which would allow him to get Nancy the plastic surgery she's wanting. To help his case, once he learns that the company is recording him, Dale begins insulting Nancy over and over for the company to hear, claiming how quote-unquote ugly he thinks his secondhand smoke has made her. Because Dale sees Nancy as a bad liar, he keeps her in the dark, making his insult seem more real and devastating to Nancy, who's already in a fragile and self-conscious state.
So now nobody wants to see your ugly face.
Then, when Joseph gets scouted by a wealthy prep school that wants him to play on their football team, Dale barely even tries to acknowledge what Joseph wants. Instead, he gets wrapped up in the so-called wealthy lifestyle and all the perks that he can get from being a parent at a prep school. Even when Joseph makes it clear that he wants to stay at his old middle school, Dale forces him to leave his friends behind and go to the prep school. Both of these instances showed off the worst of Dale's greed. However, we do have to acknowledge that while he was certainly doing it for himself, he was also partially doing it for Nancy and Joseph's benefit, truly believing that Nancy would only be happy if she got the surgery she wanted, and that Joseph would be better off at a rich kid's school. Of course, this doesn't excuse his actions, but given how much he regrets them and makes up for it by the end of both episodes, we still can't say that it's the worst thing he's ever done. Becoming a people exterminator. With all the chemicals that Dale uses, it's no surprise that it all eventually caught up to him.
Mask's mask.
In one episode, Dale is forced to quit being an exterminator and take an office job in order to avoid dying before he's 50. But while at Stick Tech, Dale discovers that he can do the one thing no one else there can do: fire employees without feeling bad about it. Of course, having the power to fire people quickly goes to Dale's head, and he enjoys holding the fear of losing their jobs over the heads of his coworkers. We understand that firing people from a business is a necessary evil in order to keep it afloat, but Dale goes too far with his callousness and cruelty. He's not only a jerk to the people in the office, but he becomes a jerk to his friends and family as well, even neglecting Joseph and breaking his promise to help him with this science project. If not for figuring out that he could kill bugs without chemicals, who knows how far Dale would have taken his new job or how obsessed with it he would have gotten. Stealing the identity of Rusty Shackleford. For nearly the entire series, the Rusty Shackleford identity was just a running gag, used whenever Dale didn't want to use his real name for conspiracy-related reasons. But then, this running gag turned out to be not such a joke after all. Dale didn't make this name up. It was actually the name of a classmate Dale had, who he thought had died. But in actuality, he just moved away. Identity theft is no laughing matter. And considering all the trouble that Dale gets into, you can only imagine all the trouble it caused for the real Rusty, with him having to deal with the aftermath of whatever Dale decided to use his name for.
My name is Shackleford, Rusty Shackleford.
Not helping matters, because he believes Rusty is there for revenge, Dale forces Rusty to spend a week in Arlen because Dale refuses to get close to him and actually talk to him, let alone take responsibility for stealing his identity. Eventually, Dale relents and signs the papers that Rusty needs him to sign, relieving Rusty of this nonsense once and for all. But it still shows how irresponsible Dale is. So, what's worse than stealing someone's identity? For Dale's worst deed, we've selected encouraging Joseph to kill a panda bear. Joseph is struggling with staying on a good path, finding himself drifting towards bad kids and ignoring Bobby's concerns. But while everyone else sees these kids as bad influences, Dale only sees them as the popular crowd, and wanting to live through his son, encourages Joseph to impress them so that Joseph can be cool too. He even tells Joseph that being cool and popular is the most important thing in life. Okay, so this is just bad parenting, right? Still awful, but not necessarily the worst. Well, like with most things, Dale takes it to an extreme. Later on in the episode, Joseph has his vision dream, and Dale, who for ridiculous reasons now believes he's a Native American, tries to interpret Joseph's vision. Naturally, Dale interprets it completely wrong, and when he learns of the cool kids' plan to spray paint their names onto some pandas at the Arlen Zoo, Dale tells Joseph to take it one step further and actually kill a panda. While Dale only sees this as a way for his son to gain street cred and look cool, everyone else sees it as a bad idea, but Dale just keeps pushing it. He even drives Joseph to the zoo and gives him the weapon. If it weren't for Bobby and John Redcorn stepping in when they did, Joseph might have committed a serious crime, and all because his dad acted like it was such a good idea. There's bad parenting, and then there's encouraging your child to make choices that can get them put in juvie, if not jail, all because Dale wanted to live through Joseph and for him to be cool. While everything, thankfully, worked out in the end, we still have to say that this is without a doubt the worst thing Dale has ever done. Alright guys, what do you think? What are the best and worst deeds that Dale Gribble is responsible for? And which character should we feature next? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. And as always, stay wicked.